Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel. Just one click from you will help us continue making documentaries about real cases with carefully researched and verified content. Early morning of December 16th, 2020. In the town of Cadillac-les-Mines, in the Tarn province of southern France, an emergency call marked the beginning of one of Europe's most controversial missing person cases. On the other end of the line was Cédric Jubilard. He told the operator that when he woke up, his wife, Delphine Jubilard, had disappeared, and he had no idea where she was. At 4:09 a.m., the information was relayed to the gendarmerie. Just about 40 minutes later, two female gendarmes arrived at the Jubilard family's home at 19 Rue Yves-Montand. Through the kitchen window, they saw an image that sparked an investigation into this particular incident. Cédric was still in his pajamas. He was putting clothes in the washing machine. At that time, no one could conclude what that action meant. But it was quickly noted as one of the first details in the file. As the family began searching the house, several surprises emerged. Delphine hadn't taken her handbag. The option itself was still there. The payment method hadn't been used. The car was still parked at home. The two young children were still asleep. There was no sign that she had prepared for a trip. This became even more perplexing when investigators looked into Delphine's life in the days leading up to it. She had just bought Christmas presents for her children. She had ordered a new car. She was also preparing to enter a new phase of her life after the end of her marriage. According to relatives and friends, Delphine was planning for the future, not disappearing from it. Each detail, placed side by side, made the question even bigger. If Delphine didn't leave the building on her own accord, what really happened between midnight and the time the emergency call was made? That's the mystery that sparked a years-long investigation involving hours of searching, hundreds of witnesses, and a virtually non-existent file. But those initial suspicions were only the beginning of a far more complex story. To understand why Delphine Jubilard's disappearance was so quickly seen as unusual, one needs to look back at her life before December 2020. Delphine Ossegel, commonly known as Delphine Jubilard, was 33 years old at the time. She was a nurse, a mother of two young children, and had a life close to her family, friends, and colleagues. In her family, Delphine was considered to be largely responsible for the finances. Colleagues remembered her as a dedicated worker. Friends described her as outgoing, frequently in touch, and with many plans for the future. By the end of 2020, Delphine and Cédric Jubilard's marriage was coming to an end. Instead of trying to salvage the marriage, Delphine began preparing for a new life. She researched divorce procedures. She gradually separated her financial responsibilities from her husband, ordering a new car, completing the Christmas gift purchases for her children. According to the case file, Delphine was also making future plans with the man she was in a relationship with after deciding to end her marriage. Those plans were all forward-looking. There was no indication that she wanted to sever all ties with her current life. During the review of the case file, the judges later paid particular attention to one point. Delphine had strong ties to her two children, to her work, and to those around her. Through the testimonies and documents collected, the judicial authorities also found no evidence that she had ever expressed suicidal intentions. Therefore, the hypothesis that Delphine voluntarily disappeared just before beginning a new phase in her life became something that investigators had to consider very carefully. The more they learned about Delphine's final days, the more they realized something. She is preparing to leave a marriage. But there is no indication that she wants to leave her own life. In the early days of the investigation, the name most frequently mentioned was Cédric Jubilard. He was Delphine's husband and the father of their two children. At the time, Cédric worked as a painter and drywall installer. From the outside, the Jubilard family didn't look much different from many other young families in the town of Cadillac-les-Mines. A wife who worked as a nurse, a husband who worked in construction, two young children, and a house under construction. That was the image their neighbors were used to seeing. However, behind this seemingly peaceful life, their marriage had long been fractured. According to the case file and testimony given in court, Delphine felt increasingly pressured as she bore the majority of the family's financial burden. The distance between them was evident not only in their daily lives, but also in their decisions about the future. By the end of 2020, Delphine had decided to end her marriage. She began researching divorce procedures. She gradually separated her financial affairs from Cédric. At the same time, she built a new life that she desired after the divorce was finalized. For Delphine, it was a choice for the future. For investigators, that decision became a crucial part of explaining the context of the case. According to the prosecution's argument, what Cedric faced was not just the breakdown of a marriage. He also faced the possibility of losing the life he had been familiar with for many years. It was also the point where the distance between the two could no longer be bridged. According to the prosecution, Cedric not only witnessed Delphine leaving the marriage, but also had to confront her, choosing a future that no longer had a place for him. When examining the final months leading up to Delphine's disappearance, investigators focused not only on the night of December 15th to 16th, 2020. They also reviewed the entire course of the marriage. And according to the documents presented in court, several worrying signs had appeared beforehand. First red flag: refusal to accept the breakdown. According to the case file, Cedric Jubilard did not accept Delphine's decision to divorce. While Delphine was preparing for a new life, Cedric still tried to salvage the marriage. According to the prosecution, being abandoned by his wife became a recurring theme in his words and behavior during this period. Second red flag: interference in Delphine's private life. The investigation revealed that Cedric allegedly repeatedly attempted to monitor his wife's activities. According to documents presented at the trial, he was accused of checking bank account history, searching through phone information, tracking her movements, and attempting to determine where Delphine met the man she was having an affair with. For the prosecution, these actions went beyond the scope of a failing marriage. They argued that it was a manifestation of a desire to maintain control over Delphine's private life. Third red flag: jealousy and feelings of betrayal. During the evidence-gathering process, investigators determined that Cedric was aware of some of Delphine's expenses related to hotels, car rentals, and personal activities. According to the prosecution's argument, realizing Delphine had a new relationship fueled jealousy and feelings of betrayal. This was seen as part of the context leading to the increasingly serious conflicts between the two. Fourth red flag: concerning statements. Several witnesses testified in court that Cedric had made statements about killing Delphine, burying her, and ensuring she would never be found. The defense argued that the reliability and context of these accounts needed careful consideration. However, the court viewed this as one of the factors to be weighed against other evidence in the case. Individually, each sign could have many different interpretations. But when placed in the context of the investigation following Delphine's disappearance, they formed a chain of events that the prosecution argued could not be considered coincidental. These statements, initially considered outbursts of anger after the night of December 15, 2020, were viewed from a completely different perspective. By mid-December 2020, according to the prosecution's argument, the marriage between Delphine and Cedric Jubilard had reached an irreparable stage. The important thing was no longer the arguments, but rather Delphine beginning to translate her decision to divorce into concrete actions. According to the case file, she gradually reduced her financial dependence. She revoked Cedric's access to his bank account, contacted the bank to inquire about changing the card number, prepared the necessary steps for divorce proceedings. Simultaneously, she developed a plan for transitioning to an independent life. On the emotional front, Delphine also looked towards the future. According to electronic data presented in court, on December 15, 2020, she was still texting the man she was in a relationship with and discussing their next meeting. For the prosecution, these details showed that Delphine was no longer hesitant. She was gradually leaving the marriage and preparing to begin a new chapter in her life. According to the prosecution's argument, this was the moment when all the accumulated conflicts converged into a motive. They argued that Cedric was not only facing the loss of his wife, he also had to accept the gradual loss of control over Delphine's life. The woman he had lived with was building a future with someone else. The marriage he wanted to save was about to end through legal proceedings, and life after the divorce would be completely different from what he had once had. According to the prosecution, it was the combination of these factors that created the motive for the case. They argued that this was not a random disappearance or an unsolved mystery. From the prosecution's perspective, this was a domestic murder stemming from possessiveness, jealousy, and an inability to accept the end of a relationship. On the night of December 15, 2020, Delphine was still making plans for the coming days. Just hours later, all trace of her suddenly vanished. The night of December 15th to 16th, 2020, was the most crucial period of the entire case. For years, no one knew exactly what happened inside the Jubilard family home. At the 2025 trial, the prosecution reconstructed the events based on physical evidence, electronic data, and witness testimony. By 2026, after the case had concluded its trial, Cédric Jubilard would finally make his confession. Before approximately 10:30 p.m., according to the case file, Delphine was still at home with her 2 children. That evening, she continued texting the man she was having an affair with. They discussed their upcoming meeting. Delphine even sent him photos, and together they chose a bottle of wine for their encounter. The final messages ended with expressions of love. There was no indication that she intended to leave the house that night. Around 10:30 p.m., according to Cédric's confession in 2026, he went to bed first. A short while later, Delphine and their 6-year-old son came into the room to wish him good night. That was the last time, according to Cédric's testimony, the two met in a normal atmosphere. Around 1 a.m. to 1:30 a.m., in his 2026 confession, Cédric stated that he woke up and went to the living room. There, the couple began talking. The conversation quickly escalated into an argument, revolving around divorce and Delphine's new relationship. According to Cédric's own testimony, he lost control during the conflict. He admitted to strangling Delphine until she was motionless. This detail did not appear in the initial investigation file, but was only revealed by Cédric many years later. Afterward, according to his 2026 confession, Cédric continued to check on his 2 children, who were still sleeping. He stated that he put Delphine's body in the trunk of the car. He took a headlamp. Then he used Delphine's car to leave the residential area. Cédric said that he let the car roll downhill before starting the engine to minimize noise that might attract neighbors. According to his confession, he drove to a location about 10 kilometers from his home. It was a place where he had seen piles of earth during his previous work. There, Cédric stated that he buried Delphine's body and returned home before dawn. These contents were released by Cédric in 2026 and were not the basis for the jury's verdict at the 2025 trial. However, they added a direct account of what, according to Cédric himself, happened on the night Delphine disappeared. But returning to the house in Cagnac-les-Maines did not close the story. That was when a completely different explanation began to be offered to the police. According to Cédric Jubilard's confession in 2026, after returning home, he began erasing any evidence he believed might be related to Delphine. He claimed to have checked that his 2 children were still asleep. He then took Delphine's phone, jacket, and boots to a nearby trash can to dispose of them. According to this account, Cédric returned to the house, lay down on the sofa, and waited until dawn. Around 4:09 a.m., he called the emergency number to report that his wife had disappeared. During the call, Cédric said he didn't know where Delphine had gone. When questioned by the gendarmerie about their relationship, he denied any argument. Cédric admitted the marriage was heading towards divorce, but insisted everything was normal. In the days and months that followed, Cédric's explanation constantly changed depending on the direction of the investigation. At one point, he suggested Delphine had voluntarily left the house. At other times, he mentioned the possibility of an accident. Then he hypothesized that Delphine might have committed suicide. He even suggested that someone else might have taken her. Each hypothesis was examined by investigators using evidence, electronic data, and witness testimony. According to the case file, the more possibilities considered, the more tenuous the basis for concluding that Delphine voluntarily left her life. While the hypotheses were successively ruled out, the remaining details in the house began to attract the attention of the investigators. These weren't striking clues. They were very small things. But when pieced together, they gradually formed a sequence of events different from the story Cédric Jubilard had told from the very beginning. It was from this point that the investigation began to shift its focus from a disappearance to determining what actually happened in that house before dawn. The investigation didn't revolve around a single finding. Instead, investigators examined each possible hypothesis to explain Delphine Jubilard's disappearance. Each hypothesis was compared against objective evidence, and one by one, hypotheses were eliminated. Investigators discovered that Delphine hadn't planned to disappear. When they searched the house, they found that almost all of Delphine's essential belongings were still there. Identification papers, bank cards, handbag, car. The phone showed no sign of a pre-planned departure. The 2 young children were still at home, the job still had upcoming shifts, Christmas presents had been bought, the new car had just been ordered. According to the case file, all these details suggest that Delphine was preparing for the future, not cutting off her life. Over the following months, investigators considered various possibilities. The hypothesis that Delphine left voluntarily, the possibility of an accident, the possibility of suicide. the possibility of her becoming a victim of a stranger or of the man she was in a relationship with. According to the investigation results presented in court, each hypothesis was evaluated, and no sufficient basis was found to explain Delphine's disappearance. Investigators discovered that the marriage was not as reported. From the early morning call, Cedric said that although they were divorcing, everything was fine. However, the testimony of many witnesses painted a different picture. Friends, relatives, and acquaintances described the relationship between the couple as having entered a period of strain. According to the documents presented at the trial, they mentioned jealousy, monitoring Delphine's activities, financial disputes, threatening statements, and Cedric's refusal to accept his wife's decision to divorce. For the prosecution, these testimonies helped explain the circumstances leading up to Delphine's disappearance. Investigators discovered accounts of the last night. During questioning, the couple's son recalled hearing his parents talking after they had gone to bed. Several neighbors also testified that they heard a woman screaming during the night. These testimonies were juxtaposed with Cedric's statement, who claimed he slept through the night and only woke up when his daughter cried. The discrepancies between the accounts became a key point of analysis for the prosecution at the trial. Investigators discovered numerous inconsistencies. Through multiple interrogations, Cedric repeatedly stated that he did not know, could not remember, or offered various hypotheses about the cause of Delphine's disappearance. According to the prosecution, these answers not only created gaps in the testimony, but also diminished the credibility of the story presented in the early hours of the case. However, in a case without a body and without a defined crime scene, suspicion alone is not enough. To bring the case before a jury, the prosecution needs to demonstrate that each piece of evidence, when pieced together, can form a unified picture of what happened to Delphine Jubilard. This is what sets the Delphine Jubilard case apart from many other murder cases. At the time of the 2025 trial, the prosecution lacked many traditional forensic evidences. Delphine's body had not yet been found, there was no autopsy conclusion, the cause of death was undetermined, nor was there a complete crime scene. Therefore, the foundation of the case was not built on a single DNA sample or a single forensic examination result. According to the prosecution, the strength of the case lay in the combination of physical evidence, digital data, and witness testimony. The first piece of evidence: the broken glass. During the search of the house, investigators discovered Delphine's broken glass. According to the prosecution, this detail could be consistent with the possibility of a struggle or violent act occurring before Delphine disappeared. For them, this was not the sign of someone calmly leaving home in the middle of the night. The defense presented a different argument. They argued that a broken item, in itself, could not prove that a murder had occurred. The jury was therefore asked to evaluate this evidence in relation to the entire case file, not in isolation. The second piece of evidence: digital data. Delphine's phone became a crucial source of information. Analysis of the device's activity, connection data, and the time the signal stopped was used to reconstruct the final hours before her disappearance. According to the case file, this data did not show a journey consistent with the hypothesis that Delphine voluntarily left the area to start a new life. On the contrary, it reflected that just before her disappearance, Delphine was still discussing future plans. Text messages, communications, unfinished plans. For the prosecution, it all pointed to the same conclusion. Delphine was preparing for a new life, not to disappear from everyone's lives. The third piece of evidence: the overall testimony. The final body of evidence did not come from a single laboratory. It was formed from the testimony of many different people: the couple's son, neighbors, friends, relatives. Witnesses testified that they had heard Cedric make threats against Delphine. All these accounts were compared with Cedric's own statements throughout the investigation. According to the court's assessment, no single testimony, taken in isolation, was sufficient to determine the outcome of the case. But when placed alongside physical evidence and digital data, they formed a body of evidence. A cohesive body of evidence that supported and reinforced each other. That also formed the basis for the jury's consideration of the entire case file. The prosecution could not precisely explain how Delphine died, but they argued that the evidence gathered was sufficient to convince the court of the reason for her disappearance, where the events allegedly occurred. By June 2021, after more than 6 months of investigation, investigators concluded that other hypotheses were no longer credible. The focus of the case now centered entirely on Cedric Jubilard. He was arrested. he was placed under formal investigation for the murder of his wife. He was also detained for legal proceedings. From the very first interrogations, Cédric denied all charges. He maintained that he had no involvement in Delphine's disappearance. Throughout the period from 2021 to 2025, Cédric repeatedly requested bail. These requests were all denied. Simultaneously, he continued to offer various explanations for Delphine's disappearance, but none of the scenarios were consistently supported by the evidence gathered by the investigators. When the case went to trial, Cédric's stance remained unchanged. Before the jury, he continued to deny responsibility and asserted, "I did not kill my wife." That was the position he maintained for more than 5 years since Delphine disappeared. However, after his conviction and during the preparation for the appeal phase, the case unexpectedly took a completely different turn. In July 2026, Cédric ended his years-long denial. During questioning by investigators on July 15th, he admitted responsibility for Delphine's death for the first time. According to the transcript, Cédric described the argument between the couple on the night of December 15th to 16th, 2020. He recounted the events leading to Delphine's death. He also described how he removed the body from the house. More importantly, Cédric also drew a diagram and marked the location where he claimed to have buried Delphine. The very next day, investigators launched a search in the indicated area. They discovered remains at this location. Subsequent DNA testing confirmed that it was indeed Delphine Jubilard. This discovery not only brought to an end the family's years-long search, but also added crucial physical evidence to the case file after the initial verdict had been handed down. Given these new developments, the appeal hearing is scheduled to be postponed to the first half of 2027 to allow the judicial authorities to conduct further investigations and forensic examinations based on the newly revealed information. After nearly 5 years of investigation, the case went to trial at the Tarn High Court in Albi. The official preliminary hearing began on September 22, 2025. This was one of the most closely watched trials in France, as the case file contained almost no evidence typically found in murder cases. From the outset, the prosecution admitted they could not fully answer a crucial question: how did Delphine Jubilard die? According to the prosecution, that gap did not derail the entire case. They argued that what had been proven was the decisive factor. From the prosecution's perspective, Delphine died. She did not voluntarily end her life. Their marriage was nearing its end. Cédric Jubilard had a motive, an opportunity, and was the last known person to be with Delphine on the night she disappeared. The threats testified by numerous witnesses, the physical evidence, the digital data, and the inconsistencies in Cédric's testimony, according to the prosecution, all reinforced the same conclusion. More importantly, they argued that the investigation had considered and ruled out other plausible hypotheses. On the other hand, the defense argued that the case still contained significant gaps. They emphasized that at the time of the trial, Delphine's body had not been found, there was no conclusive DNA sample, there were no direct witnesses to the crime, and the cause of death had not been determined. According to the defense's argument, the investigation risked focusing too early on the husband, thereby interpreting the evidence in a single direction. After weeks of deliberation, the jury and the panel of judges entered the deliberation phase. On October 17, 2025, the court found Cédric Jubilard guilty of murdering Delphine Jubilard. The judge sentenced him to 30 years in prison. The verdict showed that the court accepted the prosecution's argument that the overall evidence, even without a body at the time of trial, was sufficient to prove Cédric's criminal responsibility beyond a reasonable doubt. Immediately after the verdict, Cédric Jubilard filed an appeal, opening the next stage of the case proceedings. When the trial concluded, what lingered in many people's minds wasn't the name of the convicted person. It was Delphine Jubilard. At the hospital, she was remembered by her colleagues as a nurse always dedicated to her patients. At home, Delphine was the pillar of support for 2 children too young to understand why their mother had suddenly disappeared overnight. To her parents and loved ones, she remained the daughter who stayed in touch, frequently sharing her plans for the future and eagerly anticipating a new phase of her life. At the end of 2020, Delphine looked forward. Work continued. Divorce proceedings were underway. Christmas gifts for her children had been chosen. The new car was just waiting to be delivered. In her mind at that time, the future had just begun to unfold. Then all plans came to a halt at dawn on December 16th. For the 2 children, the greatest loss was not just the absence of their mother. Their childhood was spent searching endlessly, from fields and forests to every small road around Cagnac-les-Mines. Every step of the investigation became a focal point in the press. The family's name constantly appeared on television. Then came the day their father was arrested, followed by long months of waiting for trial, where every aspect of their private lives was scrutinized before the jury. For Delphine's parents, siblings, and friends, that time was like a wound that never healed. They didn't know where to bring flowers, nor did they have a place to light a candle on her death anniversary. All hope pointed to one thing: finding Delphine so she could return to her family. The confession in the summer of 2026 finally led investigators to the burial site of the remains. That discovery couldn't make up for nearly 6 years of waiting, nor could it reclaim the days the two children had grown up without their mother. Even so, Delphine's family no longer had to live with the question that had haunted them all this time. Where is Delphine? After nearly 6 years of searching, that question finally had an answer. And for the first time since that winter night of 2020, those who loved her had a place to remember her, to say goodbye, and to close the longest journey of her life. Sometimes, the hardest thing to accept after a breakup isn't that the love has faded, but that the person you were once close to is choosing to move on and go their own way. When possessiveness overrides respect, the line between holding on and destroying can become incredibly thin. The Delphine Jubilard case also reiterates a familiar principle of forensic science. Very few cases are solved by a single piece of decisive evidence. The answer is often formed from many seemingly disparate pieces: electronic data, witness testimony, physical evidence, and contradictions that emerge over time. Only when everything is put together can investigators see what each individual detail alone cannot reveal. Ultimately, what was found was not just where Delphine was buried. It was also the answer her family had been waiting for almost 6 years, and a reminder that the truth sometimes comes very late, but can still be brought to light thanks to the perseverance of those who do not give up searching for it.